The last one, obviously Knicks Hawks going on right now, but the last game that I saw was the Lakers going into Phoenix, and another result that people were not expecting, but a first game loss for the Lakers. The Phoenix Suns came out like they were not afraid. Booker and Paul looked wonderful. Paul actually got pretty scare looking injury in the second quarter where he got run into by his own teammate, hit him up around the neck area. But I think it was like he probably had a spasm in his muscle or something, looked pretty painful, and he had to leave the game. But he came back, fought through it, and important for the Suns to have that because they need him to be a late game facilitator. But Booker was really, really special in this one. He's finally getting the opportunity to shine in the playoffs, which is what I think he's built for. And Monty Williams knows, like, they ran the same play for him like 4 or 5 times in a row because he just kept getting this like double screen, curling around Ayton and working in the mid range or finding the open man in the corner, like making the right play. Just that look in itself, they were able to completely dissect the Lakers defense. And if you're the Lakers, you got to try something else. Maybe Drummond shouldn't be playing. Maybe it should be Marc Gasol just as a better defender. Or maybe you should be going small with Anthony Davis at the 5. That's when they've had their most success. You just worry about Anthony Davis having to bruise with DeAndre Ayton. But the Suns really, really fantastic performance. People forget. I think they were 7th ranked in defense. One of the only 2 teams. Them and Utah were the only 2 teams to be top 7 in defensive and offensive efficiency. And Phoenix, they're really good for a reason. They're number 2 in the West for a reason because they have the squad as a whole to be able to take on these teams like the Lakers. And again, poor performances overall from LeBron and AD. Like, they put up the raw numbers, but the efficiency wasn't great. And LeBron looks a little bit deferential and timid right now. Maybe they're just dipping their toes in the water, feeling out the series, but they're really going to have to get going soon because Phoenix got on them in a hurry and they don't look scared at all.
It's interesting you mentioned that with the bigs, like, oh, maybe they go Davis at 5, because I remember you were saying, I think like their bigs are going to be a huge advantage in this series.
Yeah, Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges and even Chris Paul, like, the Suns don't necessarily have the size, but they have guys who are willing to get in there and box out. And so while the Lakers have had some success with the centers getting offensive rebounds, such like that, overall, they're getting killed way more defensively for having a Drummond out there on the floor because Booker and Paul are just like going to work on them. It's just killing them a lot more than what value they're getting on the offensive end. And a big part of this game really came down to the missed shots by LeBron and AD. Like, they just were not in rhythm yet. And that is, you're going to see the series shift based on success those 2 have. That's what it's going to come down to. But yeah, Marc Gasol is a guy you're going to get at least solid defensive communication, and he's going to compete. And I just think it's worth a shot to give him a look because Drummond really was looking lost defensively. And I just don't know if he is bringing the right value for them on the offensive end.
Is that similar to how they were against the Warriors, but then they did heat up? So is that they just didn't have it in them at all, or did Phoenix do something different, better to stay
Well,
ahead?
it did actually feel a little bit like the Warriors game where the Lakers were kind of hanging in there, and you knew they were going to make a run at some point. But there was a mix up where LeBron got fouled by Paul on a loose ball, and players had to be separated. And I think just the Lakers started to impose themselves on Golden State physically in that game late, and LeBron made a couple big plays. Whereas Phoenix, it just felt like they're at home. We're at home here. We're the 2 seed. We should be beating you guys. We should be here. And even as such a young team with not a lot of playoff experience, really led by Chris Paul and Jay Crowder, there was a feeling that they were not going to back down and they were not going to roll over when the Lakers started creeping back into the game. And yeah, it was almost a mindset difference. Whereas with the Warriors, similar level of like non-playoff experience, but Yeah, it's tough. I think you swarm Steph and you make Draymond make a play, and whereas you can't really swarm a Booker or Paul because one of those other guys is going to hurt you in a way that is just tougher to deal with than Draymond. Like Draymond will pick you apart, but if he doesn't have the shooters to go with him, then he's not as dangerous. Whereas Phoenix has the shooters, and Paul and Booker can create their own shot and make the plays. So yeah, it feels a little bit different in this series, and the Lakers are going to have to wake up in a hurry. Again, like the Nets, a team that's shaking off the rust and trying to build chemistry on the fly here early in the playoffs.